We have two speakers today. Chris Turner is the founder and CEO of Business Advantage, and he is based in our headquarters in the UK, just outside of London. Chris has over 30 years of sales, marketing, and management experience, including extensive international experience working with clients across Europe, the Americas, and Asia Pacific. Nicola Mansfield, also based in the UK, is our Director of Market and Competitor Analysis at Business Advantage. Nicola's worked for Business Advantage for 11 years and specializes in multiple method market research and competitor analysis. So with that, I would like to hand over to Chris, who's going to walk us through the presentation. Over to you, Chris.
Thanks very much, Bill. May I add my welcome and thanks also for investing your time in this webinar. Business Advantage over the last 22 years has completed more than 500 projects in the CAD, CAM, CAE, PDM, PLM space, but they've all been for clients. And so this year we've produced a CAD Trends survey which is publicly available. And today we're going to cover 10 of the most important trends and those that we believe are the most interesting to look at. We're also going to look at hardware usage now and in the future, and also look at sources of information, where people go to inform themselves about developments in the CAD market. More information on these trends is available on a presentation that's on our website and also available through SlideShare. And at the end of the webinar, we will be sending a copy of the recording and a link to the presentation, which is the full presentation. So, a brief overview of how we did the survey. We did an online survey in December of last year, which went out to 55 countries worldwide. And we've looked at 14 topics. We've looked at the perceived importance, the actual and future usage of these trends. And we had 409 respondents, users and decision makers from across the world, from a mix, as you can imagine, of different company sizes and industries. The data was drawn from our own CAD-CAM data repository, which has over 500,000 CAD users and decision makers worldwide. So we'll now look at the breakdown of the audience or the respondents to the survey. If we first of all look at the top left-hand part of the screen, we can look at the respondents by geography, and we can see that 2/3 come from EMEA, slightly less than 1/6 from APAC, and slightly more than 1/6 from the Americas. If we go to the top right-hand side, we're looking at the respondents by their size of company, and 3/4 come from SMEs or SMBs, although there's quite a broad definition of SME here, which is between 0 up to 1,000 employees. If we split that out, the small companies up to 50 employees come in at 44%, so somewhat under half, and the medium companies are 34%, and the large, over 1,000 employees, are 21% of the sample. Looking at the bottom left, we look at the respondent profile by job title, and you can see that just over 1/3 of the respondents are managers in technical disciplines, CAD, engineering, design, etc. About another 1/3 are engineers and designers, and then we have executive management, and about 8% are IT professionals. And then lastly, if we look at the breakdown of the respondents by their industry, that's on the bottom right-hand corner of the slide, and you can see quite clearly there how that's made up. So we're going to look in overview of the key trends, and we've done some initial analysis on those as a whole, and then we'll go into more detail on 10 of the most important trends coming from the survey. So the 14 key trends, if you will, that were looked at we took a three-phased approach to investigating these trends. First of all, we looked at awareness of the trends and asked people, as you can see on the screen there, those that are familiar or heard of particular trends. And then we asked for a measure of importance, and we asked people to consider the importance of this trend in relation to their core business functions and how important it was to their company. We then asked about their current and future usage of the technologies that these trends represented. And so we have now a view of current and future trends for the CAD market worldwide. This slide provides a snapshot of the current trends and looks at the awareness and usage of the technologies or the trends. The trends are ordered by adoption, and an adoption ratio has been created by looking at the current usage shown as a proportion of the awareness. And I think if we look at an example here, it'll become very clear what we have. If we look at the first trend, which is 3D modeling on the left-hand side of the screen, we can see that 81% of those surveyed are aware of this particular technology or trend in the market. And that represented 330 people that were aware. 62% of the sample were using 3D modeling. That's 255 people. So by comparing the two, we have an adoption ratio for 3D modeling of 77%. If we look at the left-hand side of the slide, to the left of the dotted line, we can see here that these trends, they have above average adoption, and awareness has translated to usage for these trends. However, if we look on the right-hand side of the screen, we can see that although some of these technologies and trends people are very aware of, 3D printing and Cloud Based CAD, for example, this awareness by itself has been insufficient to drive usage of these. We seem to have a technical hitch at the moment. We'll just get that back. Okay, thank you. So on the right-hand side, we can see that these are trends with lower adoption, and the awareness alone is insufficient to drive usage of these. We will talk more about that later, and it's an interesting way of looking at the data, we think. The next way of looking at the data has been to compare the usage and against the importance. The usage is plotted on the vertical axis and the importance on the horizontal axis. So if we look here, we've got three quadrants essentially. The first that are used for the data. So if we look at the bottom left-hand quadrant, we've got low usage and low importance. So at the moment, these will be considered somewhat niche trends. If we move over to the bottom right-hand side of the slide, we've got lower usage at the moment, but high importance, i.e. increasing trends. And then finally, if we look at the top right of the screen, you can see right at the top there is 3D modeling. And these findings tie up very nicely with the previous slide, that trends with high adoption are perceived to be highly important, and vice versa, generally speaking. So if we look at the 3D modeling, first of all, as I mentioned at the top right hand of the screen, if we then come down to the dotted oval that covers the right-hand side of the screen, we can see that these trends are developing, and particularly looking at simulation, it's an up-and-coming trend, and mobile access to CAD. So we can see quite clearly the usage and importance plotted on this particular slide. Okay, so just quickly and in overview, looking to the future, where is growth coming from in the next year and the next 5 years? These 3 lines represent the situation now at the bottom in 12 months and then in 3 to 5 years as we go up the chart. And we can see, first of all, that the wider the gap between the lines show there's greater opportunity for growth. On the left-hand side there, we've got a couple of trends that are mobile access to CAD and BIM that are showing a good growth potential for those trends. But 3D printing and cloud-based CAD are showing the greater growth potential, but at the moment, these trends are rated as less important by the users. So they're definitely one to watch for the future, and I don't think there are any great surprises there for us. So we're now going to look at the growth opportunities in more detail, and we have, and then at the end we have a final summary view of the greatest growth opportunities during 2014 for these particular leading trends. So the 10 trends we're going to look at now will be ranked in order of importance as rated by the respondents to their business. The first trend, as we've already identified, is 3D modeling, and this is rated number 1 in importance with a score of 7.5 out of 10. If we look at the growth, if we look at use now in-house at 62% and use now and plan to use within the next year at 68%, we can see that there is 6% increase in usage or 10% growth on the base. And if we look at that over the next 3 to 5 years, we see a growth rate of some 14%. In terms of current usage, Germany is the leading country in the world from our survey at 81% currently using 3D modeling, the UK down at 62%, and the USA at 59%. Unsurprisingly, in terms of sectors, manufacturing is leading. However, what was very interesting from the survey is that AEC now has a slightly lower but very similar level of usage of 3D modeling as manufacturing. The survey also has revealed that medium-sized companies are more likely to be involved in 3D modeling than smaller, which perhaps one would expect, but also larger companies. Medium-sized companies at 70% have a greater usage of 3D modeling than larger organizations. In terms of software brands, the users of Dassault and PTC have a very high utilization rate of 3D modeling from their tools. And again, I don't think that's surprising to anyone. Dassault at 79% and PTC users at 82%. We did ask people that rated this as important but not using currently why that was. And the sample size here gets quite small, so there's limited data. But it was quite interesting that some 20% of people cited high cost as a reason for limited adoption, thus perhaps giving an opportunity there for lower cost solutions, or maybe cloud-based offerings with flexible licensing may extend the opportunity. The next trend we'd like to look at, the second most important from the survey with a rating of 6.9 out of 10, is product data management, or PDM. You can see that the growth from using now to using in a year's time is from 16 to 20%, which is a 25% growth on the base over the next 12 months, and over the next 3 to 5 years, it represents a 44% growth. The Americas is leading in adoption compared to APAC and EMEA. 1 out of 5 CAD users in America are likely to use product data management. However, if we look at an individual country, Germany 28% of those from Germany are currently using PDM. Again, not unsurprisingly, companies in manufacturing are big users of PDM in comparison with other sectors, and medium to larger companies tend to be the more typical users. In terms of usage by CAD brand, PTC users at 47% are leading, followed by Siemens at 36% and Dassault at 32%. The third trend that we're going to look at today is simulation. This is given an importance rating of 6.5 out of 10, and is showing growth, certainly, some 14% over the users now over the next 12 months, and with about 25% growth over the next 3 to 5 years. Again, interestingly, Germany is leading as a single country with 47% usage, followed by the USA at 35% and the UK at 22%. In terms of the size of companies involved, larger companies, 41% of large companies tend to be using simulation in their design work, and that drops to 32% with medium-sized companies. The larger players in the manufacturing sector, particularly Siemens, PTC, and Dassault, 68% of Siemens users, 67% of PTC users, and 54% of Dassault users are leading in this particular area. And again, similar with 3D modeling, cost is a reason that individuals gave when they rated this as an important area or trend, but were not using it. And so it may be that lower cost solutions or cloud-based solutions with flexible licensing may expand the market there. Also, and perhaps unsurprisingly here, lack of users' technical knowledge also was a barrier to adoption. However, there is a trend of simulation tools being incorporated with CAD design tools, but there is concern in the market that there may be a lack of expertise or understanding of these tools and the results that might come from them. So I'd like to hand over to Nicola now, who's going to discuss more of the trends with us. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. So we asked our respondents about their familiarity and their awareness of building information modeling, otherwise known as BIM, and 165 of the respondents were actually aware of the term, or familiar with it. And 1 in 5 of those companies or respondents were actually using BIM in-house at the moment. We saw a higher usage in medium-sized companies, and that's companies with between 50 and 999 employees. And clearly some of our respondents could see the benefits of using BIM, and the sort of areas I mentioned were design improvement, savings on design time, cost, as well as faster response times to market. We expect to see high growth in this area. The next 12 months, we're expecting 35% growth, and between 3 and 5 years, we're looking at more like 60% growth. There is higher usage in the UK and the US market. And interesting, unlike some of the other trends we saw, a slightly lower adoption of BIM in the German market. Some of our results demonstrated the current opportunity in the UK market. The UK government has actually outlined an ambition to achieve BIM level 2 for all their central government construction projects by 2016. And our results actually show that the government sector is likely to fuel growth over the next 5 years. Many of the people currently using BIM are actually using Autodesk products within this sample. Moving on to product lifecycle management. Importance to score here is slightly lower, it's 6.2 out of 10. There's higher usage of PLM in the American market, more so than in EMEA. And they tend to be, not unexpectedly, in the large companies, about 27%. We can see there's still a lot of work to do to educate the market about PLM, because only 128 people out of the 409 were even aware of the term, and not surprisingly, it was most prevalent in the manufacturing sector. The perceived benefits were mentioned were things like savings on design time, that was almost half of the respondents, cost as well as design improvements. And again, we're expecting to see growth here. It's about 22% growth over the next 12 months and 61% between 3 and 5 years. Amongst our sample, it appears that there is high growth potential, particularly for Siemens users. And one interesting area was there's an indication that the processing and plant sector may be more likely to adopt PLM over the next 12 months. Moving on to concurrent engineering, we actually provide a definition of this as multiple users working on a single model in real time. And here, again, the importance score is slightly lower, 5.9 out of 10. And only 12% are actually currently using concurrent engineering within their organization. And again, typically these are the larger companies. Large companies, typically with over 1,000 employees, are more likely to be using concurrent engineering. Growth, again, is predicted to be about 90% over the long term, 3 to 5 years. Somewhat less in the next 12 months, where we're suggesting about 33% growth. The Americas is the leading market, with about 16% usage at the moment. And we'd also ask a related question to concurrent engineering in terms of collaboration. And it was a separate question. So as part of the survey, we asked which collaboration tools, if any, our respondents were using. Interestingly, over half of the market either don't use or are not aware of collaboration software. And there does seem to be, from other studies that we've completed, a problem with the understanding of what collaboration tools really are. And there's a need to educate the market, but clearly there's an opportunity there. Moving on to mobile access to CAD, and this is the use of things like tablets, mobile phones to access tab applications. The importance score here is 5.8 out of 10. And currently 21% are currently using CAD on a mobile application. Interesting, it seems to be CAD managers who are more likely to be using CAD using a mobile device, more so than particularly designers or engineers. About a quarter of those in the AEC are using a mobile device to access CAD. And recent studies we've completed outside of this survey have actually shown that it's more likely to be architecture and engineering rather than the construction sector. The highest growth over the next 12 months is actually expected to be in the APAC region, and there's a lot of potential opportunity with 48% growth over the next 12 months and 67% over the next 3 to 5 years. Moving on to the next area, big data applications. There's been a lot of talk about it in the press recently, but at the moment there's a lack of awareness, and it's not that prevalent in the CAD sector. And really, again, there's a lack of understanding of what's really involved in big data, and more education is needed on the benefits to the market. We did have quite a small sample size here, but 45% did actually mention that being faster to market would be a key benefit of big data applications. Interestingly, over half of the people who had heard of big data couldn't actually describe what it was. We're looking at about 33% growth over the next 12 months, and we're suggesting 67% growth over the next 3 to 5 years. I've noted the German market, and at the moment it's about twice the overall average. They're much more likely to be using big data applications over the next few years. And in terms of regions, APAC is one of the leading with 5%, followed by Americas with 4%, and EMEA 3%. Over the next 12 months, data suggests that usage in the government sector in particular is likely to pick up, growing from 4 to 8%. Moving on to 3D printing, and now we're getting to the lower importance scores that Chris mentioned earlier. And 3D printing was rated at 3.9 out of 10. Awareness of 3D printing is very high. 2/3 of participants were aware of 3D printing, but the importance rating, as I mentioned, was quite low. Interesting, brand awareness is not at all high in relation to 3D printing. The most frequently mentioned 3D printing solutions provider was actually Stratasys. Highest usage is in the Americas, and particularly in the large companies. And there are clear benefits seen for 3D printing, things like design improvements, 63%, savings on design time, cost, as well as faster response time to market. We're suggesting 50% growth over the next 12 months, and over the next 3 to 5 years, this increases significantly to 128% growth. And amongst our sample, I think Chris mentioned it earlier, but PTC and Siemens customers are users of 3D printing currently. And then the final trend that we're looking at today is the cloud-based CAD. This again had a low importance rating of 3.7 out of 10, but it actually shows one of the highest potential growth areas, with 128% growth over the next 12 months and 257% over the next 3 to 5 years. Current usage is slightly higher in the AEC sector and also amongst large companies. APAC is showing the higher growth potential compared to other regions, America more so than EMEA. And benefits that were mentioned in relation to cloud-based CAD are things like higher mobility, increased storage capacity, the ease of updating software, and also cost reductions. There are major concerns over security of cloud computing, and this has come up frequently in many of the projects that we've been involved with for various clients over the last few years. So these concerns should be addressed by the vendors offering these solutions. But it's certainly an area of growth. So I'd like to hand back to Chris, and he'll talk about some other areas of interest.
Thanks, Nicola. So two other areas from about another half a dozen topics that we surveyed, we're going to look at today briefly. One is the hardware that's currently being used today, and also over the next 3 to 5 years. And we're going to look at information sources. Where do people go to inform themselves about developments in the CAD market? And then finally, we'll look at all 14 trends that we surveyed, and we're going to rank them by their growth rates over the next 12 months, thus showing some of the greatest opportunities for vendors in the market. So this slide, as the title says, it shows us what hardware is currently being used and what will be used next. If we look at the left-hand side of the chart first, we can see that desktop workstations will decline, but currently the highest use of desktop workstations is in Germany at 64%. Desktop PCs are highest in the UK at 56%, and then lowest in Germany at only 31%. Currently, CAD managers are more likely to use desktop workstations, more senior level managers are using desktop PCs, and laptops are most common amongst engineers. And laptops are also, interestingly, most used in large companies. But moving to the right-hand side a little bit, and looking to the future, looking at tablets, for example, so mobile access to CAD really is something that shows quite dramatic growth through tablets. And this is interesting because the growth that had been predicted previously has not been achieved. Only 6% of people currently are using tablets, but they're forecasting that over the next 3 to 5 years will almost treble. Mobile phone usage will grow, but it remains a very small part of the a limited platform, perhaps unsurprisingly for the use of CAD and design solutions. When we look at the country base, we find that mobile phones and tablets will be used more in the US than any other country, and tablets and workstations will be more popular amongst CAD managers, So just a quick snapshot here of what hardware is being used and what people will be using in the future. These are their plans. So where do users, influencers, and decision makers of CAD technology go to keep themselves up to date with developments in the CAD industry? So here we've asked people the sources of information that they use, and we've ranked them by their usage, so ranked in order of mentions. Again, I don't think there are tremendous surprises here for any of us. If we look at some of the differences, we have higher usage in the Americas of online sources than in EMEA, and webinars are also lower in Asia Pacific. Again, that's a very typical finding from many, many surveys that we've carried out for various clients looking at this particular topic. Again, we find that in some cultures in Europe, technical detail, printed material with a lot of technical content is very important, and so we're showing a higher usage of brochures in EMEA than either the Americas or Asia Pacific. And as the market in the Americas has seemed to develop faster for content marketing, we're showing that users in the Americas are a more frequent, or the white papers are a more used source of information for people seeking information about the latest developments in the CAD industry. Now, this is just an overview, really a very high-level overview. We can break down the data by region or by country in some cases, by size of company, by industry, by software usage, and other variables. So finally, this slide shows a summary of the forecast growth amongst the 14 trends that we've discussed, that came back from the survey, and we discussed most of them today. And this represents some of the greatest opportunities for companies providing solutions in the market today. The trends have been ordered or ranked by their growth rate over the next 12 months. And again, we're just going to look at three or four here, perhaps the top three and the last one in a little more detail. So cloud-based CAD. In EMEA, over the next 12 months, it's expected that usage of cloud-based CAD will double. However, APAC shows the highest growth over 12 months at 171%. And over the next 3 to 5 years, in both APAC and the Americas, the expected growth is 328%. Smaller companies are currently forecasting the highest growth potential with 183% growth over the next 12 months and 383% growth over the next 3 to 5 years. There is a slower adoption amongst medium as large companies, again, possibly due to a more sophisticated approach to concerns over data security. So coupled with cloud-based CAD is pay-as-you-go, and this is quite interesting. We felt that when we looked at it by country, the highest growth is expected in Germany, where it's likely to double in usage in the next 12 months, while APAC is currently showing very low usage now and over the next 12 months, although there are some indications of growth over the 3 to 5 year period. The third area is 3D printing, and this is quite interesting that over the next 12 months, overall, it's showing a growth of some 50%. Longer term, though, there is a very high growth coming from the UK, 182%, over 70% in Germany, and 38% from the US. And we looked at this by brand, software brand, as we touched on earlier, and Dassault users are likely to be driving usage with 42% growth over 12 months and 74% growth over 3 to 5 years, followed by Siemens and PTC users. And then right at the bottom, we looked at 3D modeling as a trend in the market of most importance coming back from the respondents to the survey. But in terms of the growth, it is showing just 10% over the next year and 14% over the 3 to 5 year period. So we hope that the information we've presented today, the data has been informative for you and will help in developing your thinking and plans for this year and beyond. We do have time, budgeted time for questions, which I think some have been coming in during the webinar. If there are detailed questions you have, please email us and we'll respond to you individually. Before I hand back to Bill, may Nicola and I just express our thanks to you for attending and listening today, and I'd now like to hand back to Bill. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. So if a few questions have been coming in, so we'll try to get to some of those. Some of them are quite specific. We may not be able to get to every one of them, but we'll go through a few now. And like I said earlier, if we can't get to you right now, we will try to follow up personally following the session today. Chris and Nicola, a few questions coming in around Cloud CAD. Maybe I'll start with this one, which is, what are the differences between mobile access to CAD versus or compared with Cloud CAD? Nicola, do you want to have a look at that one?
Yes, we are specifically about Cloud-based CAD applications. So these are applications hosted elsewhere, so the user does not need to install a license on their desktop or laptop. Mobile access to CAD we're defining as access to CAD applications via the use of laptops or tablets or mobile phones that are actually used in the field.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Let's see, there's another question around it. I'm not sure we went into this, so we may not have an answer to this one, Nicola, but around mobile access, do we have any idea from this survey about what functionality customers are looking for out of Cloud-based CAD, what they would like to do with Cloud-based CAD? Do they actually want to do design and input, or is it really just reference and checking and accessing existing models? Do we have anything on that or not?
Let me just check. We asked about the benefits of using CAD, CAD in the cloud, but not specifically the features or functions, the functionality that we're using. So no, not as part of this survey.
Okay. Perfect. Let's see here. Around 3D printing, one question here. Around 3D printing, you mentioned Stratasys, but did the survey capture a number of brands used in 3D printing?
Yes, it did. We did ask for brand usage. Interestingly, though, and I think it was about, from memory now, I think it was about half the people that were using, 40 to 50% of the people that were using 3D printers could not recall the brand that they had. But those were mentioned were Stratasys, as I think we mentioned earlier, Objet, 3D Systems, of course, and Z Corp or Z Corporation, but that of course is changing. But historically, that's a brand that has been used.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. Let's see. Do we have any? Again, back to CAD in the cloud. Do we have names of solutions there, or vendors or names of solutions when we're talking about CAD in the cloud?
We have quite an extensive sort of battery of or long listing of different types of CAD solutions or programs that people are using. They completed that for us, some of which can be accessed via the cloud, but we don't. I don't think we specifically asked what people were using for CAD in the cloud. No, I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Another question here. Do we have the ability to, or can we drill down into some of the broad market sectors that we're talking about? For example, with AEC, do we have the ability to look into civil engineering versus transportation, planning, and design?
Yes, we do. We gave some very broad kind of sectors today, and we've grouped in AEC a number of subsectors, and we can therefore drill down, just as was asked, by subsector in the AEC and also in some of the other areas that we looked at. So the broad ones with AEC, manufacturing, process and plant, et cetera, but we do have more details looking at in the AEC market, yes. We can go into that for an individual or for a number of companies if people are interested. We've got things like structural engineering, MEP engineering, construction, facilities management, civil and site design, fixtures and equipment. We've got, so it's broken down in a number of different ways. So touched on road and site infrastructure, highway design, land development, GIS and mapping, road design, surveying, urban planning. So we've actually got a fair number of subsectors that we can analyze. Some of those, of course, the sample will be quite limited, but we can certainly do further analysis and breaking out the AEC space.
Perfect. Thank you. We had a couple questions or requests for links to this presentation, and mentioned that the presentation that we'd originally made available didn't have some of the slides that we'd put in and added at the end of that. So what we will do is we will update that presentation online and make that available. And we will be, after today, when we send out the link to the recording of this webinar, we will also send you an updated link to this presentation so you can get the full presentation with the additional slides. So a few questions around that. Sorry to put you on the spot here, Nicola and Chris. I'm not sure if you have an answer to this or not, but with fairly high growth expected in outsourcing overseas, were there any specific sectors that showed up as being the areas where that's going to occur specifically?
I think we'll need to look at that, Bill, in more detail. Neither of us have an answer to that off the top of our heads, I'm afraid.
Nope, perfect. That makes sense. Not a surprise. Just came up, so I just wanted to ask. Let's see. Question here just about Business Advantage. Does your firm focus exclusively on CAD, BIM, AEC industries, or general business analysis?
Okay, thank you. We specialize in the high-tech area, so that we've got quite a broad definition of that. So IT, software, telecommunications, digital broadcasting. We have clients in all those areas and many subsectors of those broad markets. But we have specialized more in the CAD/CAM space than any other. Probably about 40% of our business has come from the CAD/CAM, CAE, PDM, PLM, et cetera, space since the forming of our company over 20 years ago.
Thank you. And a couple more here before we wrap up. This one specifically about 3D modeling. 3D modeling, the question is, 3D modeling usage shows about 9% growth of new users over the next 5 years. What does that mean, or does that mean that the market is saturated?
Okay, well, we don't feel that it's saturated. I think the growth is a bit higher than that, actually. I think we're showing something like 14% growth, if I recall, in the 3D modeling area over the next few years. But I think, yeah, 10% over the next year, and then about 14% over the next 3 to 5 years. But and I think we touched on it briefly in the presentation, that when we asked, when some of the respondents commented that this was an important area, but they were not using 3D modeling, we asked why, of course. And cost was one area that came back, the leading area, I think. And so, as we touched on briefly, if vendors can provide lower cost solutions, or maybe cloud-based solutions here with more flexible licensing, that there's going to be an opportunity to expand the market, we believe, and therefore increase the growth. So there is demand there. More people would like to use 3D modeling, but they may need some help to justify that. So it's kind of a complex area. But obviously, as we've touched on, the growth is slowest, in fact, among all the 14 areas in that specific space. And we've done a lot of work looking at 3D modeling for clients, so we have a lot of knowledge in that particular area, which we can perhaps discuss more on an individual basis if people are interested.
Thank you, Chris. Another question coming back to CAD in the cloud. Did we come out of this with any indication about which industries are most likely to or interested in investing in the cloud?
Yes, we do have that information. We don't have it to hand, I don't believe. But any of the data points we can analyze by a large number of variables, including industry, size of company, region, geography, country, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, we do have some data on that. And again, if that individual will be kind enough to email us, we can do some simple custom analysis and provide you with that information.
Thanks, Chris. Maybe following on that point, let me see if I can read this one here. Maybe it relates similarly, but besides, it's phrased as, besides these future items listed in the PowerPoint today, what else did we get out of or gather from the survey that we weren't able to put into the list being presented now? Because there may be other specific areas that are of interest to individual around one particular trend. Do we have the ability to do some additional data mining, maybe is the question, in specific areas to answer specific questions that people may have after today's presentation?
Yes. Yeah, we absolutely. What we've decided to do is that if there's a pretty simple analysis that we can pull off, we'll probably just do that as a goodwill gesture for someone. But if we have to really play with the data a lot and look at it from a lot of different angles, then we'll need to make some charge for the time. But yes, we're very happy to go through the data and pull out other information and compare trends, do custom analyses. Not a problem. Again, please let us know your interests, and we can make you aware whether we can do that quickly and simply, or whether we'd need to make a charge for it.
Perfect. Thank you. I mean, I think it's probably fair to say that in any single one of these trend areas, we probably could have done a 20-minute or half-hour webinar simply on any single trend within today's presentation. But we were really trying to cover a broad section of the trends that we thought might be most interesting, most relevant to people that we found out of the survey results. All right, I think we're just about there, but let's see. A question that just came up was answered online by Lakshan, but might be interesting. Do you happen to know the difference in current and future adoption of simulation within AEC versus in the mechanical CAD market? And Lakshan had just answered that. I'll just read it off, saying that current usage of simulation in AEC is 18%, and this is likely to grow in the future. So is there anything else that Chris or Nicola, off the top of your head comparing that with MCAD, or not? That may be too specific for right now.
Yeah, it is. Just as you said, Bill, we've concentrated on the high-level stuff, but that's a very simple thing to be able to do. We can provide penetration by or growth usage now and anticipated growth over 12 and then 3 to 5 years by industry sector. I think, yeah, we may well have that already, actually, but it's certainly very easy to get at.
Okay. And a general question here about our surveys that we generally run, not necessarily just this one. So the question is, what is the typical size of your survey samples in other surveys that we do?
Well, that's an interesting question. It's they vary so much. And there are so many factors: the size of the market, the availability of sample, the availability of budget, the importance to the client of a particular research project. So, we've carried out some very specific surveys, and we may have interviewed 50 people. And yet we've carried out others where we've interviewed hundreds and low thousands, I think. So it's a very broad topic. But we have experience from carrying out in-depth interviews with a very small sample, a qualitative approach to research, as well as online focus groups and in-person focus groups for qualitative work, through hard-to-find people or senior executives, where we typically use telephone research for smaller quant-based projects. And when we're looking at a broad base of users, or perhaps sometimes consumers of technology, then it's been in the thousands, and typically is web-based, of course.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. Well, good. There are a few more quite specific questions that have come through that I think we'll probably do better to answer individually offline. So I think with that, I think we can call that a wrap for today. What I might like to do is, as we close the presentation today, a brief survey is going to pop up, and we would very much appreciate just taking a minute or two and letting us know what you liked about today, and any areas that we could do better, or any areas you'd like to have us drill deeper into in the future, in future webinars. We're planning on doing a series of webinars that we have scheduled for the rest of the year, but that is somewhat flexible, or we can add others in if there are areas of importance. And with each one of these, we want to get better at how we do these webinars. So, Chris, Nicola, anything you want to add before I wrap us up today?
No, as expressed, we really appreciate people's time, and thanks for attending and listening.
Okay. And for myself as well, thank you very much, everybody, and have a wonderful day, and thank you again for your time. Bye-bye now.